Hello, this is Deborah Anderson, the Black Woman Animator, coming back to you with another video. And this video is part of my Jobs in Animation series. And we have Wendell Britt, who is going to tell us about being an executive coordinator with Blue Sky Studios. So, Wendell, can you give us a little background about yourself?
So my career began, had an undergraduate in Chinese literature, and then I moved pretty much immediately to working at the Apple Store so I could eat, which led to a job at working customer service at Airbnb, and then I was on their tax and legal team, and then I moved back to my college to be their alumni coordinator. So I have no actual like animation background. I got there through a random story that we'll talk about a little later.
Yes, so that gives you people hope. If you have nothing to do, if your career has nothing to do with animation, you still can get in. Um, so, what was your relationship with animation throughout your life before getting your job?
Yeah, I was a huge. I when I got the job, I described it in my interviews as for the longest time I was the weird kid outside the glass, just looking in, just like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing in the world. I loved animation, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Hey Arnold, Doug, all the Saturday morning cartoons. I was a huge anime fan. As man, let's be real, I still am. Uh, and so I've always loved consuming that content, and I even like tried to like learn how to draw when I was a kid, and that was less than encouraged by my parents. So I've had a very interesting relationship with even that industry as a possibility for me. So I kind of jumped at the chance
Mm-hmm.
to, even in any capacity, like hang out in those rooms with those people and kind of get to interact with that work.
So, what was it? What about it wasn't encouraged?
Well, so my older sister is a band director, like a middle school band director. She's 9 years older than me. So by the time that me and my younger sister were coming up, we were encouraged to do extracurriculars to be well rounded so that we go to college. But my parents were both an aerospace engineer and a computer scientist. So they had very specific dreams for us, at the very least, making money doing technical, professional type things. And I'd even wanted to be a music major. I'd played saxophone, and they were like, "We already had one music major. We checked that box, like done. Already got one starving artist, so we're not going to do that again." And that was kind of just variations on that narrative throughout my life. Have kind of been like, "Yeah, yeah, do it for like fun." You know, it's always nice to have a hobby, but there was always that no, but this isn't serious, this isn't real, this isn't a respectable thing that you can do, which always felt strange because I'm just like, they're cranking out like a lot of movies and spending like a lot of money on them. Someone's got to be making
Right.
money off of it.
So, as what can you tell parents about kind of that mindset that they're discouraging their children, even children that are artistic? What can you say to parents about discouraging that, especially in the digital age where we have more computer animation or just the various jobs like working in the industry? What can you say to parents about supporting their kids who are artistic or who want to work in the animation industry?
Well, the first thing I would tell them is if the kid is young, go ahead and watch that children's movie with them. Watch it, pay attention, and then use your adult brain to recognize that, like, okay, now go to Wikipedia, find that budget. Okay, $50 million. Okay, look at the credits, look at all the different jobs that it took. And if you're a
Yeah.
black parent, look at those credits and look at those credits and see how many, not to be like boringly stereotypical, like Tanisha's or Jamal's are in the credits. There's not a lot, but in this world in which like we are pushing more towards diversity, there's a huge opportunity for people of color specifically to like get in the industry. But also, it takes like Blue Sky Studio had 600 people working on one of these movies, and not all of them were animators. Not even all of them were artists. Not even all of them. Yeah, like there were people that just were coders that have to produce the technology that can allow the movies
Yeah.
to happen. Again, I was a coordinator, so I was doing executive assistant stuff, making spreadsheets, like supporting executives because the people who are the best at maybe telling the stories aren't the best at getting their own coffee or working in Microsoft Word, or even just knowing enough about the people in the studio to like provide meaningful like programming. So it literally takes a village to make every single one of these movies. And so if you're a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, or a zookeeper, like you'll find something to be able to add value to that industry. And I think that's the big missing piece. Like we need finance people, we need lawyers, we need any type of thing. And so if you can find that love of animation and then maybe match it to a skill set that you have, maybe if it's one that you consider to be valuable, go do that. And if you want to be an artist, like start soon. That's the easiest thing I'd say, is don't be half wishy-washy about it. Go ahead and start supporting it, because those skills, even if you don't end up making it in the industry, being able to like think creatively and like produce stuff and like create content is still always useful, and is almost like more useful in the age of social media. Like I got all my artist friends that have these amazing Instagrams and are constantly making stuff, and I'm like, you're not even like that good, but like you know how to make stuff, like you know how to get stuff pushed out, and that's not what most employees necessarily are able to do, self-motivated, you know?
Right. So let's get into how you got into the industry.
Yeah, so that's a funny story. My dear friend Maggie, if she checked this out, Maggie, you're the best, you're a real one. We went to college together. We were both huge Star Wars fans. She's probably the only person who I truly consider to be, I'm like, yeah, you and me, like we're on the same level, different camps, but like very Professor X Magneto kind of Star Wars. And she is from Connecticut, so she went out to Connecticut and had been starting at Blue Skies and at the receptionist at first. And then she kind of worked her way up to being the executive coordinator for the chief technological officer at Blue Sky. I was in Portland, eyeing a move to the East Coast, really not satisfied with my job, really wanting to do something new. And out of the blue, I guess that would have been like May 2018, she was like, yo, you're interested in moving to the East Coast? And I was like, yes, exactly that. I would like to do. To do what? And she's like, do you want to work at this animation studio? And I was like, I spent my entire childhood failing to get even the opportunity to maybe show up to something like that.
Right.
So, yeah, I would love to. And it turns out that the senior vice president of production, Adriana Cohen, AJ, I love her so dearly as well, needed a Maggie to sort of help her with what she was getting into. And she asked Maggie, who do you know? Maggie was like, I know this guy Wendell. And I was like, hello, I'm he.
Right.
And I guess they liked me enough to put me on to work for them. And that was a totally wild journey. I'm no longer there, so I'm looking back like kind of fondly in memory of like that was a really good time.
So tell us, what does an executive coordinator do?
So it's an interesting gig, because people would ask me all the time, like, what are you actually doing? And on a good day, I'd be like, whatever the heck I want, whatever is sort of needed, I just go and I like figure it out and I make my boss's job easier. On like the worst day, it's duties as assigned. So really, it's just being like a third hand for an executive. And so it kind of depends on the executive. Like if someone is really trying to be an executive coordinator, my advice to them would be learn about people, learn about their values, and learn like what type of people that you are most able to be complementary towards. I happened to really luck out with AJ. She really wanted to do a lot of diversity initiatives at Blue Sky, and she was really interested in employee engagement and wellness, and gave me a huge leash. She was like, do these 5 things, and then just go out and onto the floor and find out what people want and be like the liaison. Like she really wanted to connect with people, but the altitude of her position made it so she couldn't do that. So it was a lot of me befriending animators, designers, lighters, hearing about like connecting with HR, hearing about the stuff they've done in the past, hearing about the stuff they want to do in the future, writing up reports, workshopping with people to get their best ideas in front of AJ. And then she'd be like, oh yeah, let's go do that. And I'd be like, great. And then I go back and then we'd make stuff happen. So the job ended up really turning into a do-it-yourself employee engagement strategy job, which totally had connected with my experience before working customer service, and
Yeah.
then as an alumni director. So she really gave me the space to like find a way to use all the skills I developed to help the studio, which was rad. But I've talked to other executive coordinators, and sometimes they really just need an assistant, or they really need someone to make phone calls that they don't want to make. So it depends really on the executive and what they want you to coordinate. But that was at least my experience.
So you had a lot of transferable skills, even though you weren't working what people think of as like these top jobs where you think about transferable skills, but in your customer service days, that really helped you out in this position.
Oh yeah, and not to. I guess if I'm on an interview, I can toot my own horn a little bit, but those are some of the most useful skills. I'd have conversations with people just about what I believe to be human nature that I picked up from getting yelled at professionally. That were just completely lost on certain types of creative people around like trust building. I'd be like, yeah, you build trust by like making sure that people know you have ability, integrity, and are a good person. And
Right.
if someone's not trusting you, one of those things is goofed, and you can just like ask them. And they were like, what do you mean? I can just ask someone if they trust me. Just, yeah, you just say, I feels like we're disconnected because you don't trust me. One of these things. And like basic things like that, or like here's how to like de-escalate a situation, or here's how to like do all this stuff. And so it was fun because those were the things I didn't really have to work at. Those just happened. I just showed up. And so the people skills is probably one of the things in the animation industry that I'm just like, oh yeah, this is missing. Anyone who can show up to the room with those skills suddenly is like a genius.
The lack of people skills, not personally, but from other people.
Yeah, which again it's not a knock because school teaches you to get really good at your craft, which can sometimes be a really lonely experience, even if you're like collaborating with people who are of the same type, but you get the battle between like production and the artist tracks, and the production people are managers and the artists are the craftsmen, and they all think that their jobs are like could be done by monkeys, and they're like mad at each other all the time. And it's just like, no, you are all valid, special, and you have different skills. You took different tests in high school, so you think that the answers are different things.
Right.
So you're a therapist as well. You are all valid.
That comes out of the customer service. Eventually, you just learn that like no one's going to listen to you until you find out what's actually their problem, and it's rarely that they didn't get the right coupon. It's like Christmas is going to be ruined because this thing isn't working out, and that's not addressed. They're not going to listen to you. So
Yeah.
that one's taking all the way back to holidays at the Apple Store.
Yeah.
Time.
So when I was talking to Andre Rodriguez, hello Andre, he was telling me about you and AJ doing like a lot of awesome things. And so can you tell me about the best things that you worked on?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that we worked on that it was so great that I rarely even think about it. I should think about it more because it was huge, but she had this vision of essentially solving the animation pipeline diversity problem. She rolled up to the studio, saw the movies that we were being made, saw the the demographics of the people making them, and was like, "There's a problem." She kicked a few tires and realized that the schools weren't bringing in enough people of color, and so thus the animation companies weren't getting. They are getting the best of who got to show up, and because those are such narrow gatekeeping. It's hard to figure out like how to get those people to in the rooms. And then she realized that like the issue was that people were unaware of how animation was being made. Like Black people don't know how animation got made. I didn't know. If I had known, maybe I would have fought my parents more. I'd be like, no, here's the path.
Right. I actually had a young lady. I was doing a presentation and at the Youth Empowerment Project here in New Orleans, and after the presentation she was like, thank you for coming. I can tell my mom like it's viable, and she ended up going to school for animation.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. So she started a program. She wanted to work with one of the school districts in New York and Connecticut to build a curriculum for their high school. So she specifically was targeting schools with predominantly like Black students to create a curriculum using the employees at Blue Sky as volunteers to work with the arts teachers to teach them like an intro to animation course.
Right.
And so she was like, we're gonna do that. And I was like, that's humongous and that's crazy. And like, okay, let's figure out how we're gonna do that. And we worked with some other colleagues at Blue Sky, Jen Nordmark, who was the brainchild of this particular program. And what we would do is we would bring schools on visits to the studio and give them a rundown of everything just to like get as many eyeballs inside the studio to see the work and to see what it looks like to be in the industry. And then out of those schools, we would then identify schools that we went, okay, can we actually like teach you, can we work with you to sort of build this like 2-semester program? And we started with one, and then they kind of goofed up because they didn't have the the administrative buy-in, and then we found this one school district, and we worked with them, and we went to like their career fair, and we just were working with them like all year, building this up, talking to like the superintendent, talking with like the teachers, building our curriculum, getting our volunteers. And right before I left, like it launched, like the first few classes started happening, and I was like, oh shoot, like 1 year ago this wasn't anything, and now kids who I've like now met and seen are getting their first opportunities to like go and work in animation. And then I'm just like, oh damn, like that's amazing.
It is.
That was cool. And I forget about that. I wake up every morning and I could be like, I could ride the high just off of that project for like a few years if I wanted to.
Right.
But it was just like
that's your hidden figures.
Right? Oh, that's intense. And then for me personally, so that's kind of more like the bigger stuff. That was the collaborative thing. For me personally, she wanted to start an inclusivity group, and she was like, go start it. And I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? And that was just my baby entirely. And so I kind of ran around the studio, finding the people who were already having those conversations, and then kind of building like, what would a super healthy like inclusivity group be? Like, what departments would they come from? Like, how much tenure would they have at the studio? What kind of program would they want to do? And it was really cool because I felt like, we got people that felt like they were in religious minorities, as well as people who were like in gender minorities and sexual minorities, and then like international people. So it wasn't just what I've seen in other companies, just like the Black kids being mad in the room. It was like, actually, we got like a lot of intersections. And that group like would meet every Wednesday and just like scheme and share information across like departments, and people would find out about stuff, and we would create programming. Not necessarily to solve, but create awareness and to create these conversations. And that was kind of cool to see because I'd never worked in a place, even like tech companies with a lot of money, who had that same kind of coordination and work.
Right.
That was fun. Like that's, I'm very, I don't know, as the conversation around diversity in the workplace happens, I'm very optimistic and deeply cynical about it, because having done it for $0 as a low tier coordinator, I'm like, at a 600-person company, I'm like, no, y'all just aren't, not trying hard enough, but like, this is doable. Like, this is doable.
Yeah, it is. I remember, so I have another video on my channel where the women in animation in the USC Annenberg came out with a gender study. And so they have a section where they're talking about how to solve the problem. And I'm sure if you looked at the study, you would come to the same conclusions that I did, that you guys aren't really actually trying to solve this problem, particularly when it comes to Black people, like Black women, because it was a gender study, because all of their solutions were at the company level, but we're not being exposed to it below the company level. So what is creating a minority group, or like maybe a Black animators group at your company? That means nothing if you don't get more Black people interested to go to school and then work for your company.
Yep. And that's the thing, and I think you're spot on, because I've seen this, not to get too political with all this stuff, but I've seen this in a lot of these initiatives where the problem that's being solved for is the feeling of shame that happens from not being able to do it well. So you'll get like a lot of really flashy, look at how much money we spent, and look at the program that we developed, and look at like the thing. Look, this is what we do. We're fine.
Yeah.
But it's never like brought to like impact level of like the world was like this, and then we did this, and now the world is like this, because in their defense, not to really defend them, but like that's a whole other company's worth of work
Yeah.
for, but they don't see it sort of ecologically where it's like, hey, like right now, the big issue that a lot of people in the industry talk about is sort of the fact that Disney owns everything. And because they own everything, they also have a monopoly on doing the right thing, which is kind of an interesting thing to see. Like Blue Sky just got bought by Disney, and part of my transition away from there was connected to that purchase. And a lot of love, hate feelings with Disney. What I can say objectively from that big picture space, they are doing like the most like diverse movies. Like they're doing like the most inclusive movies. Like they could always be doing better, but when you look at them compared to like other places, it's like, no, Disney's doing Globetrotter dunks on everybody. But then when you look inside like the company and how they're engaging like their employees, there's like this huge sort of difference where again, it's the same sort of problems, and Disney doesn't have to solve for the internal problems because it's such a blessing to be able to work at Disney that they just have to keep the fires not burnt. They just have to keep people not mad to win the internal game, and then they have to keep pushing the envelope in the external game, but in a game that's like really easy for them to win. So the big opportunity is the people who like in their DNA, top to bottom, build in inclusivity and diversity and like actually make good on that and actually have like reports that say, here's how we've solved this problem, are the only spaces that are going to do a really good job. And that kind of comes at the leadership level. Like my boss is a Black, queer, Jewish woman at the VP level and had the clout to just be like, go fix this. And then we did. So now I'm just like, yeah, just do that.
Right. Now you know it can work.
And it'll work.
And then you have on the other side where they are willing to waste all of this money and improperly implement something, and because they'll go all the way down to using a quota system where they're not even looking for good people, they're just looking for that minority person, and then you put anyone in the position and then you're like, see, it doesn't work. Diversity is not important because you just picked anybody out of the sky and didn't even try to pick quality and then wasted money, which you are willing to do to prove that diversity doesn't work.
And again, they're become incredibly fragile to the context where it does. And again, it's going to be so interesting to sort of see that because there's so many intersections. Because the other issue that I've sort of seen like in animation and just in companies in general is continued employee education. Not really great at it, like because animation is such a prestige industry. It's like, cool, we're getting the best people out of college, and their natural hunger and drive for having murdered all their classmates to even get here will be enough to like rise the ranks. But if they've got a management structure or construction of the company that doesn't reward that continued work, they stop. They're like, I'm not going to bust my ass to do this and not get any sort of benefits and not get sort of paid better. So then there's this like wall of like talent that can happen. And so constantly they're just sort of filtering people in and out, like doing really cool work by bringing people from like, you know, outside of the country to do the work or so forth and so on. But they're not solving it by saying, okay, we've got someone who's passionate, talented, cares about this stuff. And we've created like a level of development where we know that they're going to be increasingly better at their craft like every day. Because then when you take, like this is me, as a Black person, I believe this in my heart of hearts, you could actually just take a mediocre Black person, and if you gave them the right structure, they're in a few years going to dunk on anyone because they know what it's like to be outside. They know how hard it was to get there. That's, I think, the plus side of what sometimes Black parents can really instill in you is that, like, twice as hard for half as much. If someone that believes that and actually support them, then you get the twice as much as a couple. That's the one thing I'm like, you could be exploiting us so much better if you were smart about it.
Like when I was in Korea, when I first went over there in 2009, there would be job postings that would say white teachers only. But then after some schools got like a hint of like black people's work ethic, then they would switch to like black teachers only. Like, so Koreans see it. Like, you can get some awesome people, and unfortunately for less money. We're working on that. I actually think the Facebook groups that we have. I'm in this Facebook group called Black on the Job, and I just had this revelation like yesterday where the social media and because people are asking questions like, how do I negotiate? What should I do? And asking all these questions, and that's what's actually going to close the wage gap, because we don't know what to ask for. Like, part of it is from the top down, but part of it is us not knowing what to ask for, not knowing how to negotiate, not knowing that you should not accept the first thing that they give you, because they can go higher. And so I feel like all this interaction in these Facebook groups or any other groups is going to actually be what closes the wealth gap, because that education and information is the key to knowing how to access more dollars.
Oh yeah. And that's an interesting piece too, because now, I mean, obviously there's so many things you can do in the environment to hook that up, but I like hearing that sort of building relationships, making like networks, having that conversation. There's so much stuff that I guess we can do for ourselves too, and it's probably like little column A, little column B.
Yeah.
They're probably gonna really not try and do a whole lot of stuff, so we should keep fighting that fight while also like, you know, how do we continue to like better ourselves, create these connections. This is really great. I'm so happy to have this conversation, because again, it can sometimes feel like no one could possibly have seen this very small struggle in this very small space that's already so far removed from everything, the animation industry. But it's the same story that people see, you know, everywhere. It's still just like, how do you get to accrue power and influence and growth in industry in capitalism, I guess. Ooh.
Yeah, and to speak of capitalism, what you were mentioning earlier about kind of the cycling through of people instead of growing people, that's what I like to call, not that I created the term, but that's what I like to call it, the McDonaldization, because...
Ooh, I felt that in my chest.
Because, you know, at McDonald's, they can pay you a low wage and then they can just cycle you out. But then on the higher level of like in the animation industry of what you're talking about, as you were talking, there's always these talented people coming out. So as opposed to growing people or paying them what they deserve, they're just going to do what all companies across all industries do is expect more work from you. And if once you come in, it's your first job, you're all excited, and then the older people are like, you'll stop eventually. And so you go above and beyond, and then you're not rewarded for your above and beyond. So then you become like the older people and you just start doing less because you can get by on doing less. And then they're just going to cycle you. You're going to get burnt out, and then they're going to cycle you through for another talented person coming out of an animation college. And then the cycle continues because capitalism, and people don't pay the investors, and the people on the board are more important than the workers and the consumers.
You've hit on a very specific thing that this is me thinking like, okay, so now you've heard this whole like landscape, and maybe you're listening to this video and you're like, okay, now what do we do? The cool thing that I do see, the really big opportunity that I think can solve for this McDonaldization problem, which again, so apt, you nailed it with that one, is the fact that like technology costs go down. The stories that are being developed are like increasing over time. The ability for like one person to make like an amazing product without the studio system is humongous. Like, there's two examples that really sort of stick to me that I'm just like, I can never be mad at the system knowing that these people did what they did, because I'm just like, oh, I just didn't even try. There's that video game Stardew Valley. This cat who wasn't even I don't even think he was a video game designer, built this entire game. It's one of the most popular games like in the world. He built it by himself over 8 years, learned how to do digital sprites. He made the music. He learned the coding. Like, it was the full Little Red Hen breakdown. And I'm just like, oh, I guess you could do that. When I looked at the tools that he used, I'm like, a lot of these are free or one credit card away from being able to be purchased. Like, they're not like inaccessible. Like, we have access to all the tools.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, that's amazing. And then everything that's sort of happening with like with Netflix and these movies that are being shot on like iPhones and like all this really great stuff. And I'm like, really, if you can find a way to like develop your craft with the tools that sort of exist, and then you just learn the skills that the the Disneys and stuff are keeping at the top, which is relationship building, fundraising, yada yada yada. Like if we can find like a generation of people who are just good at that and match them with people who have the talent and then hook them up with skill development, yeah, we could make a lot of really cool stuff for cheap. Like one of my friends at Blue Sky, he's a compositor. He makes short films. One of his films is called The Blues Crab, and he made it by sourcing the work out to like 60 artists all over the world. I think actually maybe even more. And he was like the director, writer, and stuff. And he used Shotgun, just the program that a lot of animators and movies people use. And then was just working with everyone remotely and approving shots like off of his phone, just like doing it. And he made this 15-minute video. It's super good, super cute, really high quality, because you got to have the best, because he was just like, I want to make this really cool thing. Who's cool in the world and also wants to make some cool stuff? And I saw him, I met him on the back end of him already having done it, but I heard him give like the talks, and he's working on his new project, and he's taken it to all of these one of the awards. He's won all these awards. And I'm just like, okay, if you can do that, like, you're cool, but like, you're like my homie, like, you're a real human person. Like, if you can do this, why aren't other people doing it? And it's because that path is so specific. You have to do it this way, in this order, in this space. And it feels like I guess that's our responsibility that allows them to let them McDonald's us.
Yeah.
Like, if we don't learn how to make hamburgers, well, then on our own, then yeah, we got to go to McDonald's. That's the only option that we have. So I'm interested in a future of animation that really, where creators really, do that work for themselves, because we can. We got Patreon, we got the Kickstarters, we got all the tools are there. We just have to be willing to, get punched in the stomach a few times, which I get why people would not want to do. No matter what, if you're in the studio having someone be mean to you for a paycheck, might as well learn how to like pay yourself, because the world's just going to beat you up, and at least you get to own something, to have your own thing.
Right.
Anyway.
And as an avid like YouTube, movies, and TV show watcher, something that I've learned watching people like Black and Sexy TV, Issa Rae, there's some other people that I've watched, but the story is king. Like, it really doesn't matter the quality. Like, as you get into it, you want to kind of improve your cameras, improve the acting and all that type of stuff. But if you have a great story, people will give you grace on the quality of the camera, or if people are not the best actors. Because I've literally, and this is the bane of my existence, I've literally watched so many YouTube TV shows where the smoke detector is beeping in the background, and I'm like, can you, first of all, put a battery in there? That's all you gotta do. Or edit that out. Like, why do I hear the smoke detector blink, the beep in this in this series? And this is across so many people, and I'm just like, it cost how many dollars? Just change your battery. But like the if you have a great story, you can do a lot, and you can just create your YouTube channel and just build it yourself, just like Issa Rae. Like, people just follow what Issa Rae did.
Yep, modeling. That's funny, because our mutual friend Dre is a modeler, but I also believe in modeling. Like, if one person can do it, you can't be that much dumber than them. And if you are, well then cool. Now your job is to be as smart as they were when they started. And you always have a path. You always have a choice. And so that being able to find the people that are doing what you want and being like, all right, now how can I do this with what I have? And sometimes I see that work. That's what's not being done. It's usually be like, well, I'm not that, so I guess we're not going to do anything. And I'm like, no, let's go do something. Let's do dope stuff.
We keep putting ourselves in a box. So, next question. Wakanda. What what do you see for the future of the animation industry? How are we going to build our Wakanda? Or like, what do you see? You have like, what's missing? What's going right? What are the opportunities?
Oh boy. So I've talked on it. I've talked on it like a little bit, but the Wakanda question is perfect because now the real question with the Wakanda question, for all of you not in the know, that's Black Panther. Get your lives right if you don't know what I'm talking about. But what's our vibranium?
Yes.
Question. What's the thing?
And with Black people, we are the vibranium. Like, that's plain and simple.
Yes. So then the question becomes like, how do we leverage that? Like, they were making their guns out of vibranium. They were making their technology out of vibranium. They were using the wealth from vibranium to like enrich stuff. Mm-hmm. And so if we are the vibranium, this is again lazy metaphor, but like, how do we mine it? How do we ethically mine it? How do we ethically, in a way that like is a renewable resource, distill it? Like, what's like the package? Honestly, this is something I have very specific feelings about. I'm kind of tired of watching Oprah get punched in the face so that we can get an opera, like an Oscar. Like, I'm
right.
We have so many different stories, and how do we find ways to pull the stories that we have out?
Yeah.
How do we find ways to like have Black people like tap into like their uniqueness in the Black experience, recognize it as valid, and then have like the self-confidence to like bring it out? Because if you've got an experience in a world of 7 billion people, at least 5 other people have had a relatable, at least 5. And then the question is, how do you find those 5? And this is what I think about. And I don't know, I track my own sense of wealth in relationships and connections. And so having that ability to be like, let's work together, let's make stuff, let's find what works, the translation work again, having been spent time in Asia and seeing like a completely different worldview, and maybe you can connect with this. Like, they don't think the same way about a lot of things that we do, and it's a thriving whole world. And I'm like, yo, if I can find like 5 things that work here that have never been done here, and be that bridge, that's huge. And vice versa. Like, if I can find something like that in like the Black community, and what are the Koreans getting into, and what's happening in China, and let's be real, what's even happening? What's Disney doing so well that they don't even know that they're doing it well? And how can we bring to the people, kind of Prometheus? Like, how do we steal the fire from all these different spaces and make something unique? That's still very abstract. I'd say, I think one of the big disruptive technologies is crowdsourcing. Like, learn storycraft, which isn't hard. There's some really great books on it that I've actually been reading on my most recent journey. There's an audiobook called The Two Heroes' Journeys that are really great. There's The Writer's Journey. There's Story by Robert McKee. All of these fantastic. There's tons of content on it. If you can just nail story, then you've accidentally nailed marketing too, because that's all the marketing is. Then if you can find out how to nail that to crowdfunding, and then recognizing like, okay, who's got good talent? Like, if you can find like what quality is, like consume good stuff, and then make connections with the people that can make that stuff, and then not get tired and find a way to make sure that you can eat while you're doing all of that.
Yeah.
It feels like that's the formula.
Right.
And it's as simple as it is probably really hard to live, because we've all lived our entire lives not doing that.
So listen this. This is a Facebook status that I created either this week or last week. It will be crazy. So you hopefully people are familiar with Black Twitter. If you're not, what are you doing with your life?
A good part of Twitter, yes.
Right. Twitter. So that's it. Black Twitter is Twitter. And so I created a status where it would be awesome to create a pipeline of all this talent, because creating these hashtags, these trends, is a skill. Like, all these like things that we're doing are transferable skills. So a pipeline where this person who created this trend or this concept that everybody is latching on to, why am I thinking of Thomas Hanks is Black hashtag? Like, and all these things that people are like throwing, because they called him Tom Ladarius Hanks. Like, just that, like, and then people hopping onto all these Twitter trends of adding all this stuff, and that's writing. And then think about all these Instagram stars that there's a pipeline to Wild 'N Out, which Nick Cannon produces. And so kind of like thinking outside of the box, having the Instagram stars like B Simone, and who else is really, because I feel like I follow like really New Orleans local people, or Super Scent is a big person who started her own. She just would post funny videos on Instagram, and then now she has the crayon case, and she sells like $1 million in makeup in a day because of her personality. And so like mining this, like you said, and using it where there are things we do for free on social media. Let's like Tyler Perry take those people. Let's create our own animation studio and just build all these people up, because the skill set is there. You just don't realize that you have the skill set because you're just playing on social media all day.
Yep. And that's the game. That's ultimately what's going to be the game. It is and isn't the game. Like there's this cat that I've been trying to follow. He's not a black dude, but Gary V. My friend Neil turned me on, and that's his whole shtick, is just like create content until you find like what
is it? Jab, 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 hook, or something like that.
Yep. So like that's the look. And again, it's just how do you give people enough emotional energy to do it so that they don't get discouraged? Like, as you're making this content, 52 a thing a week. I'm about to, on my podcast, about to hit like 10 episodes. Like, how do you keep that emotional energy going so you don't get discouraged? Because it might be the 100th episode that has something pop up. Yeah. And then how do you give someone like a strong enough vision to know, okay, I'm going after this, it's worth it. And then how do you like remove that friction so that you can do it at the way that scales to the speed of your life? Because I do know that it'd be really annoying to me to have someone come to my house and be like, knock, 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 the revolution's here, let's go. I'm like, man, I'm tired. I've got 2 thin dimes. Can you do something with that? And to not have it be so dramatic, knowing that it's gonna accelerate, but what are the baby steps? Like how do you get people to imagine that? How do you imagine a world better than when you're at without getting mad at the world that you're living in?
Right, especially as a black person. And just to explain the kind of, I think, is it called Jab, 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 Hook with Gary Vee?
I think mostly that's what it's called.
Yeah, so to explain that, it's pretty much like providing free content over and over again, and then once you have that paid content, people are invested. So the behind the scenes of that is, okay, if you're providing all this free content, particularly if you're teaching people something, the people can learn for free. Do they like your teaching style? So that when you offer something paid, like, okay, this is going to be good. So that's the behind the scenes of. And then I think about a couple years ago when I came out with a blog post called "How I Got My Job in Animation." I wish I had this back then, because LaShawn Thomas, who's the director of the first 2 seasons of Boondocks, retweeted it, and I was like famous for a day and a half. And if people were looking for me, they could have found my YouTube channel. I could have got more subscribers. So that's also why you're producing this content, just in case you go viral or some famous person. If you just hit for some reason one day, there's all this backlog to get people invested in you, and then you have more people to support you in the future.
And the main thing that's really benefited from me and my work, because that is key. Like, no one's gonna see not stuff out there.
Yeah.
The cool thing that I like about the human mind is that we don't like doing bad stuff. Like, I think that's why it's so hard for people to get started. So most people focus on trying to make like one good thing, but it's like, no. If you can increase your tolerance for how bad you can be, and keep making stuff, like, your quality is going to scale to, like, your brain's just going to start getting mad and be like, stop doing this. All right, here's some motivation so you can do it right now. I'm tired of looking at the same raggedy thing 14 times. The 15th time is when we're going to take the next step. And now that you've got 15 things and that upped quality, everything after that is going to get to keep that. And so you make, it's funny that you said you're making a thing a week. Ray Bradbury had a thing that stuck with me. Oh, it made me so mad when I heard it. Because he was like, write a short story every day, every week. it's impossible to do something bad 52 times in a row. And I was just like, you saw, that hurts. That hurts me. Because he's right. It's so right. There's no way you're writing 52 bad stories. Maybe you only get one out of them. Maybe the 52nd is the one that's right. But you'll get better just having like showed up. And that, I think, to tell people that are already at the bottom of the pyramid of capitalism, to give them that kind of hope, I think is deeply necessary. But it's also like, it's like, oh, some more real painful work where I have to feel bad about myself for a while. I'm like, yes, but this one, life gets better, versus the one that you're doing where life just keeps being the same and terrible. And it's hard to make that pitch. But truly, like, that's the thing. It's like, it's good for the first like 7 months, it's probably going to feel the same. It might even feel a little worse. Now you're doing two things. But to be able to like offer that hope and just to show all the data of like, yeah, here's what happened. Like I did a podcast years ago. We did maybe 20 episodes before I was like, oh wait, this is good. Like this is okay. Like I'm okay listening to this and looking at like stuff, and people are starting to reach out to us. And I was like, man, I'm so glad I didn't give up at 15. Right. I never would have gotten to this moment. Which again is rough, but that's the game.
Something that important to my life that you mentioned is getting comfortable with failure, because last week I've been like writing, journaling, trying to wrap my hand, because I'm a creative person, but I'm very analytical to a fault, because my analyticalness traps my creativity in a prison. But just trying to figure out how to get comfortable with failure as I learn new skills, because I watched a podcast with Kevin on Stage called The Love Hours with his wife, and they had like a therapist there, and she was saying, I think I saw like a Instagram post that she had, and she was saying the hardest thing about learning is when you have to unlearn something. So that opened my mind to, that's why kids can learn easier than adults, because they don't have much to unlearn. As an adult, you have a bunch of stuff to unlearn. So we have to unlearn that failure is bad. And then a breakthrough it's not a breakthrough, it's the beginning of a breakthrough that I had this week, is I play basketball. At this point I used to, but I'm going to get back into it. But I thought about how when I'm shooting, if I'm shooting around at a gym, I feel comfortable missing shots over and over again. So how do I transfer that into my art, where I'm okay missing shots with my digital sculpting, or missing with if I don't like it? So I don't know if it's because it's quicker. I'm trying to break down why and I mean, I've been playing since I was 5 years old, so probably that is the key, just that I kept going. But the fact that I'm okay, like if I'm shooting free throws and I miss 5 out of 10, I'm more okay with that, and I'm trying to get better. But how do I transfer that into my art of being comfortable with the missed shots?
That's the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. There's a cat, Chris Duncan, that I followed as well, who he was learning tennis late in life. Maybe he was like 31 years old. And his tennis coach said, if you miss the line by this much out, you're out, and you beat yourself up and you're real sad about it. If you make it this much in, then you made it, and everything is like really great. And if you're running around being like so happy that you made it in and mad that you're making it out, but it's the same distance, then you're like focusing on like the wrong thing. So like, how can you still experience joy when you mess something up?
Yeah,
is the same amount of joy that when you get sort of something right. Maybe you get that joy, and maybe you add a little bit more, because it's like, it is pretty fun to win. The idea is like, how do you, I guess in his space, he was talking about like, it's like focusing on the end, focusing on that feeling of, well, I'm playing to win, and winning involves micro losses, but you don't lose until you give up. And if you are so afraid of failure that like failing is going to be the thing that makes you give up, well, then it's like, and not to get too raggedy with it, but I keep thinking about these mediocre white boys just running the world. I'm like, what is the difference? It's terrible. But the difference is like, they already feel like they're winning, or that they should be winning, or that they deserve to win, and they keep showing up with their mediocre stuff, their terrible looks, and it works. And I think about, again, not to project, but like, my experience with like my mom and my sister, and specifically like Black women, where I'm like, y'all are actually good. They're like,
Right.
what's the difference? And it's like, oh, you're good because of how thoughtful you are about stuff, but also like that
Yeah.
thoughtfulness is also a function of no confidence. And so I'm just like, how do we get these people from here over to here and then get rid of this mediocrity? Because
Yeah.
it doesn't have anything to do with objective reality at that point. At a certain point, if I
Yeah.
can put a switch in someone's heart and be like, you're confident now, I'm going to be like, that person's going to do some really cool stuff. So long as that switch is flipped.
Yeah, and that's the scary thing about us as Black people trying to get better and higher in society is that most of our awesomeness comes from being downtrodden. So how are we going to keep that once we get up there? Like, is it all going to go away?
Oh, you're preaching right now. That's the question. That's, oh boy, yeah, you hit me. Because built an entire identity around making $1 out of 15 cents.
Right.
What happens when you get $1? Yeah, you're going to turn that into $15, but you're still going to have that scarcity mindset. To let go of that would have that identity be to die. But that identity is what got you here, and so you like it, but it's also the one that's experiencing all the pain.
And then when we have children, we're like, oh, we want their life to be better, but then they don't have that grit. So we as we're trying to get higher in society, someone needs to be starting to create a plan, like a psychologist or something. Like, how do we keep that grit as we're building our communities? Somebody needs to do that. That needs to be somebody's role.
Whew. Yeah, I'm here for it. Oh,
Yeah.
man. All right.
Well, I feel like that's a great place to end.
I'm like, where do I get to go from there? Damn.
So, if you have thoughts about this video, please put them in the comment section. Like so I know it's real. Comment and tell me how you feel. Subscribe to Seal the Deal and sign up for post notifications to show your zeal. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.